Hello and welcome. Our top story today is from Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland. The territory is making major diplomatic gains. In 1991, Somaliland declared independence from Somalia, and it has been looking for legitimacy ever since. After waiting more than 3 decades, Israel became the first country to recognise Somaliland. And now, diplomacy between the two is shifting from symbolism to a boots-on-the-ground approach. Yesterday, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar visited the self-declared republic, breaking a 34-year diplomatic barrier. He met with Somaliland's President, Abdirahman Abdullahi Mohammed. This is the first high-profile visit by an Israeli official since Israel recognised Somaliland last month. The move triggered backlash from the African Union, the European Union and the Arab League. Only Israel's close ally, the United States, supported Benjamin Netanyahu's decision.
Mr. President, Israel is truly honored to be the first UN member state to recognize the Republic of Somaliland as an independent and sovereign state. This is the moral thing to do, and this is what we did. We hear the attacks, the criticism, the condemnations. Nobody will determine for Israel who we recognize and who we maintain diplomatic relation with.
Well, Israel and Somaliland have agreed to establish full diplomatic relations. The two countries will be appointing ambassadors and opening embassies. Israel also welcomed Somaliland's intentions to join the Abraham Accords.
We hope to see other nations soon follow suit. An independent Somaliland rightfully deserves its place among the nations. I welcome Somaliland's intention to join the Abraham Accords. This is a natural connection between democratic countries, both in challenging regions.
And Somaliland's president thanked Israel for what it called courageous decision.
Your visit carries historic significance and marks an important milestone in evolving relationship between the Republic of Somaliland and the State of Israel. It reflects not only political recognition, but also a shared commitment to transform that recognition into a substantive, forward-looking and strategic partnership.
Now Somalia has reacted. The country is clearly irked by Israel's diplomatic manoeuvres. Following Sa'ar's visit to Somaliland, Somalia's foreign ministry issued a statement. Mogadishu slammed the visit, calling it an unauthorised incursion. Somalia's president also claimed that Somaliland had agreed to host an Israeli base and taken displaced Palestinians in exchange for official recognition. Somaliland has denied these allegations. The relationship between Israel and Somaliland is a symbolic one. Somaliland is a region that is seeking international recognition, and Israel is suffering international isolation over the Gaza war. Barring the US, it has barely any allies left. So Israel needs supporters, and Somaliland wants global acceptance. Plus, Somaliland's strategic location provides an incentive for Israel to boost ties with the breakaway region. Let's take a look. Somaliland lies in northwestern Somalia. It shares land borders with Ethiopia and Djibouti. The territory sits along the Gulf of Aden near the el-Mandeb Strait. It's one of the world's most important shipping corridors, linking West Asia, East Africa and Asia. Control and stability around this maritime chokepoint are central to global energy flows, trade routes and regional security. Analysts also highlight Somaliland's proximity to Yemen, home to the Iran-backed Houthis, who have launched missiles and drones at Israel. The Houthis say these strikes were in solidarity with Palestinians. Analysts say that by gaining access to the Red Sea via Somaliland, Israel could launch direct attacks at Houthi targets. Israel has gained an ally in the Horn of Africa by recognising Somaliland. The global backlash against Benjamin Netanyahu's government is loud and growing. It remains to be seen if this move will further isolate Israel from the rest of the world. And crucially, what does this mean for Somaliland and the wider African region? Well, joining us to explore this further is Chike Chude, an African affairs analyst joining us from Lagos in Nigeria. Welcome to Firstpost Africa.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Let's first look at this visit from Gideon Sa'ar. How significant is it when much of the world is still condemning Israel's initial recognition of Somaliland in the first place?
Well, I think it's significant in the sense that it's a consolidation of an action that Israel took about 10 days ago that has led to international condemnation. So what the visit signals is a solidification, or of that decision that was taken, that unpopular decision that was taken by Israel. And it is a decision that would also encourage Somaliland that perhaps it is not so isolated, and that the future might be bright. Obviously, while the rest of the world, most of the world, or much of the world are absolutely opposed to the recognition of Somaliland as an independent state, citing violation of international law. There are a few other countries like the United Arab Emirates that have positive disposition to Somaliland, and perhaps one or two others. But those ones do not have the political will to come out openly to express support for Somaliland. So this particular action by Israel, and then the visit of the Israeli of the Foreign Minister of Israel to consolidate the agreement, is something that, while lifting up the morale of the Somaliland government, would further create division between Israel and then all the other countries that are not supporting this action.
Yes, and Chike, Israel clearly, it seems, pushing forward with their diplomacy with Somaliland. What does Somalia and the wider African community do next?
Yeah, well, it's a problem. Obviously, this is a slight on the African Union. And in international law, at least the way it has been going on for some time now, there is this general recognition that the regional bodies have a lot of influence within the regions where they operate. And so the words of the disposition of the African Union should carry a lot of weight with regards to what Israel does or does not do with Somaliland. And for Israel not to adhere to the direction of the regional body, I think would be insulting to the regional body. And so the question is, what do they do? Definitely not anything that has to do with conflict. The continent is not in a position and does not want to have any kind of conflict with Israel. Right now, Israel has about 40 diplomatic relationships or missions in Africa, and that is significant. Israel has been making a lot of incursion into the African continent long before now. And then I think in 2021 was accorded observer status at the African Union. That created some rift with some other countries, but the vast majority of countries were disposed to having them as an observer, at the African Union. So I think there's something that can be done. If they feel that Israel is not respectful of the decision of the Union, of the disposition of the African Union, then perhaps they might begin to look at diplomatic means. Israel has worked very hard to establish relationship with some of these countries. Not too long ago, it established a diplomatic mission, reestablished a diplomatic mission after 51 years or so with Zambia. So they have worked very hard at this, and I'm not sure that they want it to be jeopardized. So if it gets to a level where the African Union, we're still far from that, where they might actually begin to maybe threaten Israel with withdrawal of Israel as in terms of their diplomatic missions in Africa. That might be one area where the African continent, the African Union might be looking at, but I think we are very far from that road. So let us see how the pressure is ratcheted and from what direction it is coming from, and then that would also determine more what the African Union will do. But like I said, if there's any area that they can look at, it is the fact that Israel has worked hard to reestablish a good relationship with African countries. If Israel perhaps feels that might be jeopardized, then they might not, and they have to make a choice between these other African countries and Somaliland. Obviously, they are going to go for, the countries in other countries in Africa. They would want to move in that direction, and perhaps they recognize Somaliland at this particular point in time. We are still very far from that anyway.
I want to finally look at the wider region, not just the parts in Africa. Of course, we've gone through the map and looked at how close Yemen is. We know how the Houthis in Israel have been involved in military action. Could African nations be brought into a conflict if Somaliland, the breakaway region, is used by Israel to launch attacks in Yemen?
No, I do not think so. But I know that the African Union will put much more pressure on Israel if it gets to that situation of being drawn into conflict. Just like you said, when you were analyzing the situation and then the nearness or closeness to a theater of conflict, that is Yemen, where you have the Houthis. And of course, that corridor where Somaliland is located is quite close to, the Red Sea corridor is a place that has been used also for the transportation of fighters and arms to the Mediterranean. And that has also caused some level of instability, for the state of Israel. So it's also a strategic security imperative for Israel. But I do not think that Africa will be drawn into any form of conflict with Israel. Africa is not prepared. Africa is not ready. Africa has a lot of other challenges, especially economic challenges, to resolve. But that does not mean that they would allow Israel ride roughshod over them. So I think that they are going to put on their thinking caps. They are going to look at, how to confront Israel over this particular issue and perhaps profile a way forward. But definitely, conflict is out of it. Israel will not want to be affected adversely in terms of the relationship that she already has with some of these African countries. And of course, the African countries have also been gaining some mutual, have been having some mutual benefits from Israel. So I think somewhere along the line, something is going to give, but definitely not at the level of conflict. They will do well. Israel is already embroiled in too many crises and controversies and will not want to have a controversy with the African continent. That will not bode well for Israel as a nation state.
Yes, we'll leave it there. Chike, thank you ever so much for joining us on First Post Africa.
Thank you.
The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this new year, First Post America gets a new look. I'm Kerry Johnston, and this is First Post America.